Hi there, my name is Michael Gleason and welcome to another edition of Extinctworld. In this episode, we will attempt to resurrect the recently departed dark ride, Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge, from Hersheypark in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Hersheypark is a fascinating history with many facets that we'll be unable to go into here, but this is going to be a very fun episode because Hersheypark is probably the theme park that I vacationed at the most as a kid and had a strong connection to many of the rides. But before we can talk about the park, we have to talk about the man who gave it its name. Milton Hershey was born on September 13, 1857, to Henry Hershey and Veronica Snavely in Derry Township, Pennsylvania. He grew up working on his family farm, and due to Henry Hershey having a penchant for constantly moving, Hershey's formal education never surpassed the 4th grade. By 1871, Hershey was no longer in school and was apprenticing for a local printer, Sam Ernst, publisher of a German-English newspaper. Hershey would later get fired from that job for accidentally dropping his hat into a printing machine. While his father asked Ernst to give Milton a second chance, which Ernst was willing to do, Hershey's mother and Hershey's aunt, Mattie Snavely, decided to make Milton apprentice with a local confectioner named Joseph Royer in Lancaster. For the next few years, Hershey would learn the craft of candy making, and in 1876 would relocate to Philadelphia to start his first business, which failed. Milton Hershey was always on the lookout for new methods and traveled to Denver to learn from their local confectioners a method of producing caramels with fresh milk. Following that, he went to New Orleans and Chicago, searching for opportunities until he moved to New York in 1893 and started training at Hyler's, a famous candy and restaurant chain. He started a second business, but that soon failed as well. Hershey then decided to return to Lancaster and got a bank loan to create the Lancaster Caramel Company, utilizing his previously learned caramel recipe to produce them. Hershey also had learned that caramel sold better in bulk, and did so. This company became a success when an Englishman visited Lancaster and, finding himself enjoying Hershey's candies, placed a large order to be delivered to Britain, the profits from which allowed Hershey to pay off his bank debt and purchase new ingredients and equipment. The factory was huge, but Hershey soon set his sights away from the safe waters of caramel to a more familiar confection: chocolate. Hershey sold the Lancaster Caramel Company for $1 million in 1893, which adjusted for inflation is a little over $28 million today, and used the proceeds to found the now world-renowned Hershey Chocolate Company. Hershey soon created a formula for milk chocolate and steadily created new products, introducing the Hershey Bar, Hershey Kisses, and the Hershey Bar with almonds. That success would eventually lead the unincorporated community in and around the Hershey factory to be named after him and nicknamed Chocolatetown, USA, and the sweetest place on earth. With Hershey's success and the fact that he and his wife were unable to have children, he instead decided to give back to the community, founding the Hershey Industrial School in 1909. This is unrelated, but when the hell else am I going to get to say that in 1912, Milton Hershey and his wife Kitty booked a stateroom on the maiden voyage of the Titanic. Yes, that Titanic, but cancelled at the last minute due to urgent business matters calling Hershey away, so they booked passage on a different liner. How crazy is that? Anyway, in 1906, Hershey founded Hershey's Park in the town of Hershey.
I wish Mom and Dad would take me someplace special. Like Hershey. Wow, the streetlights really are shaped like chocolate kisses. And this is where the mysteries of chocolate making come to life, at Hershey's Chocolate World.
The original park was, well, a park, which featured gardens and walking paths. It also contained a structure for dancing and roller skating, and it would have remained that way if it wasn't for increased tourism that led to the park eventually adding carnival and amusement park rides. In 1923, the park added the Wildcat, a PTC wooden coaster, and then in 1926, a small Ferris wheel and an airplane swing followed. In 1931, the park gained a dark ride, the Pretzel, and in 1946, the Wildcat was torn down and replaced with Comet, another PTC wooden coaster. The park started to decline in the 1960s due to both stagnation, seeing as how the park had only added 4 new rides during the entirety of the 50s, and vandalism due to the park not being gated.
Life comes from different places, turns a beautiful morning to a wonderful day. Things to see, things to do, places to be, there's life for you. Hersheypark happy, Hersheypark glad. So many things to see and do, good times to be had.
Because of those factors, the park transformed from the regional amusement park into Hersheypark, the gated theme park that we know it as today, and would constantly develop with new rides, walk-around characters depicting the various products, and areas being added to the park over the years through expansion. There is also an entire complex which also includes Hershey's Chocolate World, a combination store, theater for 4D movies, and a highly stylized trip through the chocolate-making process. But before we get to today's ride, we have to talk about another famous chocolatier of Pennsylvania, H.B. Reese.
Chocolate.
Peanut butter.
Hey!
Oh, hey, you got your chocolate and my peanut
You got
butter.
peanut butter on my chocolate.
What? Delicious.
Two great tastes that taste great together. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Real milk chocolate, delicious peanut butter.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
On May 24, 1879, H.B. Reese was born in York County, Pennsylvania, the only child of Aquila and Annie Reese. Reese was a creative young man and was always finding ways to make extra cash, milking cows and raising frogs to sell to restaurants among his ventures. In 1916, Reese was hired as a dairyman for Milton Hershey, and Hershey eventually placed Reese in charge of his dairy farm. But due to expenses, the farm was closed down in 1919, leaving Reese jobless. Following the closure of the dairy farm, Reese founded his own candy company, the R&R Candy Company, and manufactured chocolate-covered almonds and raisins while working 2 other jobs to support his very nearly a dozen children. Despite having left the factory, however, Reese would continue to use Hershey-manufactured chocolate for his chocolate coating, and Hershey would support Reese whenever he hit on hard times. In 1921, Reese returned to Hershey and started working in the shipping department at Hershey's factory. Reese developed new types of candy for his company, now named the H.B. Reese Candy Company, and eventually had enough success that he was able to quit Hershey's factory and make a living manufacturing candy. While delivering some stock to the Bluebird Candy Shop in Harrisburg, the owner complained that he was having trouble with deliveries from another candy supplier who created chocolate-covered peanut butter candies. The owner asked Reese to consider creating his own version, which Reese did, creating the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup in 1927. After years of including them in assortments, he sold the individually wrapped pieces for a penny per cup, and was able to keep afloat because of it during the Great Depression, and during World War II, due to economic constraints, eventually discontinued all but the penny cup, which ended up being a smart move, as it was the company's best seller. Reese would pass away in 1956, and his children predictably sold the company to the Hershey Chocolate Company in 1963. Leading to the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup becoming the staple Hershey product that it is today.
If Reese's were a ride, what would it be? Smooth like peanut butter, ride it and see. Wrap it up in chocolate, ride it in the dark.
Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge now at Hersheypark.
You got your ride in my game, I got my game in your ride. Extreme Cup Challenge is one of a kind. 2 taste together and the fun increases. There's no wrong way to ride a Reese.
Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge. Experience it only at Hersheypark.
In November of 2004, the park began planning a new dark ride, and in May of 2006, the Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge opened in the Founders Way area of the park. The ride replaced a building that formerly held the park's first aid and ride department offices and a practice skating rink. The exterior was built to resemble the Hersheypark Arena, which sits not too far from the amusement park, fitting in with the ride's sports-related theme. The $5.1 million attraction was constructed by Sally Corporation and featured a pretty elaborate, if a little out-of-place backstory. While on the queue, the riders would learn of the history of the Xtreme games. In the 70s or 80s, 2 sports stars emerged, Sonny Pulaski, a blonde pro surfer, and Kip Callahan, an all-star quarterback. Sonny attributed his surfing skills due to the fact that before going out to surf, he'd eat 3 spoonfuls of peanut butter, which is actually pretty dangerous, since spoonfuls of solely peanut butter has been known to cause choking, and Sonny would go on to appear on the cover of Surf Dude magazine 36 times. Kip Callahan is a Pennsylvania native who, true to the place he grew up in, always had a Hershey bar before every game, which he attributed as a source of his success. In 1998, the 2 sports legends were brought together to host the Xtreme games. That featured their children competing. Kip's son Zach became a snowboarder, while Sonny's daughter Skylar is an inline skater. Zach and Skylar became fast friends and even started dating, but the Xtreme games went off the air when their fathers couldn't agree on whether chocolate or peanut butter was better. As you do. Their kids schemed to get the games back on the air by showing their fathers the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, which proved that peanut butter and chocolate didn't have to be enemies and could instead be two great tastes that go better together, which led to the creation of the Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge, which is a friendly competition between peanut butter and chocolate lovers. If you think that this sounds shockingly 90s for a ride released in 2006, you'd be correct. According to the Hersheypark general manager Frank O'Connell, Extreme Cup Challenge was designed to appeal to families. All members of the family can ride together, and that's what Hersheypark is all about. A strategy that is entirely the antithesis of Disney under Michael Eisner. A spokeswoman for the park, Mindy Bianca, said in addition to that, the ride is also expected to be popular with teenagers because it has the feel of a video game. There we go, that sounds familiar. The riders would be separated into two groups of 4, either being Team Chocolate with brown light guns or Team Peanut Butter with orange light guns. The queue also had a single rider line which always moved much faster, and if you were a conniving kid, you could stand on it with a friend and hope that there was a group of 2 followed by a group of 3 on the main line so that the 2 of you would get placed in the same car. Not that I'd know anything about that, though. The ride itself was very similar to Walt Disney World's Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, which may have influenced this ride's effect on me as a kid, since I adored that ride, but very rarely got to go to Walt Disney World, and this was the next best thing. The ride started out going through a dark tunnel with yellow lights down a hill before you'd be spun around and deposited into the first scene. The 3 scenes were shooting galleries with targets and figures with limited animation. Most of them were flat 2D images, but some were 3-dimensional. All the scenes had a blacklight effect that was, for lack of a better term, popularized by rides such as Superstar Limo. The scenes all had something to do with extreme sports. The goal of the attraction was to use your light guns to fire on the targets to gain points. The ride had 2 types of targets, yellow ones worth 1,000 points and orange ones worth 2,000 points, with opportunities for bonus points abound in the ride. There was a rock climbing scene, a beach surfing scene, and between each section there'd be a setup of the animatronic figures of Sunny and Kip commentating on the attraction, with the scores presented on a scoreboard behind them. Bianca also stated at several points along the track the riders can smell chocolate and peanut butter. I rode this several times as a kid and never picked up on that, but then again the entire park smells like chocolate, so maybe I just missed it. The second section had winter sports like snowboarding, more rock climbing, and then a skydiving scene that really nails down the Buzz Lightyear comparisons with the starry skies. The third section featured another hill before exiting into the finale, where Sunny and Kip would exclaim that there's no wrong way to play the challenge, as the riders get to see their final scores. Many riders over the years noted as how the attraction aged, the guns would sometimes be unresponsive, with some groups never scoring any points despite hitting all the targets, and it's not fair that my brother in the chocolate car was scoring points while my gun didn't work. But I'm not bitter. In total, the ride experience is only a little over 2 minutes, which frankly isn't worth the length of the time that the guests would sometimes spend waiting online, which I remember being at least 10 minutes on a slow day, hence the single rider trick. In August of 2018, Hershey announced a top-secret plan, which turned out to be the retheming of Extreme Cup Challenge into its successor, Reese's Cup Fusion, a ride that features the riders taking on the role of Reese's agents traveling through a Reese's factory to stop Mint the Merciless from causing problems with the Crystal Cup, and while the ride hasn't opened yet, appears to be similar to a different Buzz Lightyear-related Walt Disney World ride, Toy Story Midway Mania, and while there are no photos of what's planned to be inside, it looks like the replacements for the targets will be screens. So why did it close? The original ride was dated, and while there's no official statement on a reasoning for the closure, there are numerous stories from guests who said that the ride would break often in later years, so it makes sense that they'd renovate it, and the new theming makes a lot more sense given the park's premise that the candy products are anthropomorphic, like the walk-around characters. The new ride looks like it will continue the legacy of a family ride that everyone can enjoy, and the new backstory sounds like a lot of fun, but a few park goers, especially this one, will miss the out-of-place extreme sports ride that they remember fondly from their youth. So that was the history of Reese's Extreme Cup Challenge. To find out where the remains of the ride are today, how I'm going to get them back, and where I will place them in Extinctworld, check out our website. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe.